right, good morning. I'm David for BigBits, and today, a lot to cover. It's been a busy week. The last live stream, I think it's been pretty hectic globally, and then price action with Bitcoin and the thing. Lots to kind of dive in today. Probably the most pressing matter in drop from the near high. Thought we were going to break out again up here potentially, and we've came back down. So one of the things I'm looking at right now, of course, we're going to go from higher time frames down into smaller time frames. I think last week our video on the 9th. So this day, probably in the morning, um, there was a lot of concern, mainly with Iran and Israel, and that caused a lot of the issues to drop in price. You'll notice if you go back to the hourly chart, things really started to go downhill when Iran started attacking Israel. Wanted to risk off. So they sold off of Bitcoin. Why they sold off of Bitcoin for a risk event, I have no idea. But that has been happening pretty routinely. So that's just something to kind of keep an eye on. Now, what didn't sell off was gold, which is actually taking off. That's hourly been doing incredible. Got up 24.30 or so. Price has just been steadily climbing up on the daily chart. It's got a ribbon. It's very bullish. It's all-time highs. It's interesting. This is a risk-off asset, especially when you compare it to how Bitcoin reacted to the same exact event. There's a lot of theories that the country may or may not be buying gold. They try to remove themselves from with America. Something to keep an eye on there. Another thing I wanted to look at was the dollar itself. If you paid much attention during the bear market, a lot of the reason we struggled so much in 2022, the dollar was absolutely crushing it. So their value in dollar. And last week, the dollar has shot up in value. So the drop in price could be expected now. Kind of the general trend typically follows. The fact that we were in a bear market and the dollar went up really hurt. But in the long run, there's not much to say that dollar can go up and Bitcoin can't. Just it it can have short term impacts from what I've seen on price with Bitcoin. Let's go back to the Bitcoin chart here. Our weekly chart. Now, if you've been following my videos, you'll know that I have been pretty confident that we are going to consolidate sideways or downward over the next few weeks, April here, and then we'll kind of reapproach things in May to see where we think the EA is pointing to. Zoom all the way out to the monthly. Now, if you started the videos with me with the live stream, you'll know that we talk a lot about the upper bands, and we're so bullish that we started price above upper bands all the way up here, or started up here so far above the upper bands. It's pretty common when you start your candles above the upper bands and come back down and at least retest the upper bounds. And we did that very quickly, and we've even dropped well below it now. It's also something that happens fairly often. You go back and look at this particular cycle back in 2020 and 2021. We had many wicks come back down into Bollinger Bands and still close well above it and continue rising and go back to 2017. This is the candle that I've been kind of looking at that kind of represents where we're at now and kind of what I hope happens. Get this kind of red hammer traded well within the Bollinger Bands, to close back above them with some momentum and kind of continue going upwards. Now, where I'm looking at as far as a little bit of concern for the next couple months is we do kind of have nearly very overbought conditions on my stochastic weights advance. But I'm not too terribly concerned. It doesn't mean that there's necessarily going to be a top anytime soon, particularly because RSI hasn't been terribly overbought. Uh, just went above 75, around 78 or so. So I'm not really too concerned about the RSI. The RSI, especially on a monthly, if you go back here, were very overbought for an extended period of time on the monthly chart in the last cycle, and then you'll notice that as well in 2017. So I really doubt it of the cycle this time around, just because the monthly RSI doesn't tend to indicate that. And if we do get some consolidation here, all that's probably going to mean is when we do finally hit that peak, hopefully, we get this extended period of overbought on the RSI and the price just goes crazy. So as long as we have some sort of consolidation here, that keeps the RSI at lower levels, giving us time to rebound when those levels do finally get up there after consolidating at higher prices. Look pretty good. But you'll notice we have started to ribbon on the monthly. It's also very, very good. But you can also see, and you can make a case for this consolidation. We're still a ways away from the end of the month. We're only halfway through the month. But I keeping an eye on this. Usually these trend changes on the monthly are pretty good at predicting several months worth of change. There's not a lot of crossovers on this indicator that aren't followed up by several other months. Same trend. And same thing kind of goes for the smooth RSI that I created. Very rarely you have trend changes that kind of alternate like they did back here. That was kind of rare. But you have a red one here, and it changed back. And of course, a lot of people were fooled by that second top, but then you change down here at the highs on a potential double top. To me, that was a pretty clear indicator that was that cycle. And if that smooth RSI stayed red all the way down to the very bottom of the bear market, the very end of it, and then it switched green. And pretty much green ever since. I like to look for green arrows and green histograms. This has a red arrow, green histograms. I would not have considered that. The colors on those have to match. But very interesting on the monthly. Again, we have take a look at the weekly chart. We are currently trending down on the indicators. The RSI that was pretty overbought, trending down. It also kind of aligns with how I feel on the monthly chart, where I think we could consolidate down for just a little bit. But news coming out that China has approved ETFs for both Bitcoin and Ethereum, that could change things. I'm not sure exactly when those go live. They can be purchased, but these are spot backed ETFs. So that means that similar to the inflows that we've been watching with Fidelity, BlackRock, the outflows we see, there could be some pretty important changes to the flows coming into Bitcoin. And another thing I want to really look at, that I don't know if there's a similar institution to GBTC that would also be offloading a lot of Bitcoin at the same time, similar to how it happened here in America. So we've been kind of having to offset the outflows from GBTC. No, we've had the huge inflows on other ETF products. The flows from GBTC has really put a dent in what those could have done. Another thing that I'm thinking about right now is with the Chinese ETFs, where are they going to get their Bitcoin from? We've heard a lot of reports that OTC Bitcoin, over the counter Bitcoin purchases that a lot of these will have to make, for instance, large Bitcoin purchases that those are fairly low. And now you're going to have all of these different ETFs globally. And there's other countries that are looking at getting ETFs. You're going to have global competition for purchasing the Bitcoin. And we are already hitting record lows of Bitcoin on exchanges, particularly with Coinbase, since they do a lot of the custody of those. But there's a lot to consider. It's interesting to think when it might happen. We don't know, but we're just going to look purely from a TA perspective. And China in the past has banned Bitcoin and banned crypto and trading, and it's had a huge impact on price out of the blue. So could the opposite be true? I suppose so. So that's something to keep an eye on. Will the news and the actual inflow impact? And another thing, we do have the Bitcoin halving coming up this week. I'm very excited for that. I cannot wait. Something we've been looking forward to for quite some time. I'm going to use the nice hash countdown here. 4 days, 10 hours, 46 minutes. This is going to be on April 20th. Lots of memes about 420, whatever. But we are going to be going from, I believe, 6.25 Bitcoin. Yes, here it is. Down to 0.125 Bitcoin per block. I think that was 900 Bitcoin a day down to 450 a day. And when we're talking about flows of Bitcoin, ETFs, now we get to look at supply flows to the miners being decreased. And you have to think that these miners are probably some of the people that are doing a lot of the OTC selling, because they are the ones who get new coins pretty routinely. Now, of course, there's always people buying at a discount, sell at a premium on OTC, but it'll be interesting to see kind of the impact of the halving. I've been through this several times before with the halving, and typically there has been a sell-off directly after the halving, kind of do a sell the news type of event, and then shortly thereafter, say a month or two after, the price goes down dramatically. There's just a lot of news going on that has been impacting price. A lot more variables at play around this cycle. It's definitely an investment that you have to keep a close eye on, particularly since this is traded 24/7. Now, over the weekend, I ran struck real, tried to their attack, and price reacted over the weekend quite significantly. Now, this isn't something you have to deal with stocks, but you wanted to manage your position if you're working on smaller time frames. Something you got to kind of keep an eye on is that news can happen while you're asleep with Bitcoin and other crypto, whereas trading traditional stuff, not necessarily true. That's something to keep in mind if you're trading, particularly smaller time frames. Now let's take a look at the TA here on the daily and see what's going on. So this kind of looks potentially concerning to me for a lot of reasons. You have a projected cross under on the mid band on the 50. You have potential rejection of this moving average as resistance. You have a downward trend on the stochastic advanced, and you have a downward trend on the RSI. So to me, I believe this kind of indicates that we're down more, but again, everything's changing so much. But from a pure TA perspective, I would not be surprised if we don't get one more good flush out of this. And I want to show you on the daily what I kind of expect. So we have this particular indicator wanting to kind of come up. We'll see how the day closes. We've still got almost 10 hours left on the daily. And if we close down, this is going to continue pointing down pretty steadily. And what I'm kind of expecting, one more big flush down here, consolidation maybe, or a big bounce back up. I really do feel like 100-day area to target, just because that moving average does come back here. That was a horrible circle, but back here, see where it touched and recovered from the 100-day. We'll see if it can do that again. Not necessarily something that I put a lot of stock into the 100. The 100 fairly best, but like I said in previous videos, I could see this consolidation continuing for a few months, honestly, just because we we have potentially some sort of top on the monthly that could kind of hold us back. But again, you're trading your price discovery kind of full as to what can happen. And another thing I wanted to kind of highlight on the monthly that I forgot to, that you'll notice on this particular candle on this month, bounced directly off of pretty much the previous all-time high close on it. So that is something to kind of take a look at. That is something that I would consider bullish. We got 15 days left in the month, so if we can continue to close with that red hammer like I was talking about, let's go back to this one here. If we close with a candle like this on the monthly, I'd still be very bullish, but I would not be surprised if we don't have a couple of months of consolidation, that aspect. And there really isn't a good trade to take right now, other than I think that this proves as a resistance rejection. I personally, I would expect price to come back down to average on a daily for Bitcoin. Now let's zoom in just a little bit. Let's go to the 4-hour. This is also just a bit concerning. We are rejecting the mid band on the Bollinger Bands. On the 4-hour, we have what appears to be downward trend about to begin on the stochastic advanced. We're still kind of bullish on the RSI, but haven't really had a divergence on the 4-hour yet. So I kind of doubt the trend is over. So we had lower lows on both indicators with lower price. Ideally, you'll want to see a higher low with lower price. That would oftentimes set in a bottom, but don't at forming yet 4-hour. Let's move into the 1-hour and see if there's a difference. 1-hour appears to be rejecting off 100, and it is all trending down. Smooth RSI, particularly, you have the downward slope on the smooth RSI, the actual RSI in blue, also kind of heading down as well. Honestly, I'm not a fan of taking any sort of position here. There's too much news going on. We're in the middle of ranges, potentially reject former moving average that is now potentially resistance. So I am kind of leaning bearish in the short term. But again, with the Chinese ETF news, anything can kind of change at the start. But TA wise, I'm taking a look at the 15. So we might consolidate if it's support on the 15-minute chart. But again, that might not hold very long. It does appear to be bouncing off the average there, but things have been trending down. Again, we're in the middle of range on the 1-hour, 4-hour, daily. Nothing really good here. 5-minute chart. This kind of puts a different perspective on the 15-minute chart, and that's why we zoom our charts on different time frames. The 15-minute chart appears to be bouncing off of support, whereas the 5-minute chart shows that we've given up support on a 5-minute chart. Closing below key moving averages, this could indicate that trend ribbon on the moving average change down. I don't put a lot of stock on the stochastic weighted advanced here, other than when it gets very overbought as a area for a top. And my favorite way to trade the 5 minute is divergence. Very overbought, quick divergences, pretty spot on for a zoom into the 1 minute. This is definitely trending down. Appears to be a fairly solid trend, nice ribbon downward. So if I were to look for trades today on Bitcoin, I would, based on what I'm seeing, back to the 1 hour, kind of zoom back out. So the only one that's looking decent for the short term is the 15 minute. You might catch some support on the mid band here, but 4 hour is also kind of hinting for downward pressure is injecting. And again, we're in the middle of a range, so I don't know if now's the time really to take a trade, but it does appear to be changing trends potentially and starting another trip down. In weren't here earlier when I was talking about this. We haven't had a bullish divergence form on this downtrend. Something else to keep an eye on that the moving averages are now trending down. They were trending up about right there from all the way back around 48,000 back in February. So this is the first time the 200 moving average on the 4 hour has went down in a month. So it should be normal to expect it to stay down days. Even if things remain bullish, they're consolidating and have corrections. Completely normal. Back out to daily. Again, this is where I fear might be rejecting moving average now as a resistance. Might take a trip back down to 100, and worst case scenario back down. 200 really hasn't been tested as support since we broke back above it back here in October. So honestly, wouldn't shock me. And then going back out monthly, there's reason to think could very well consolidate for a couple more months as we've kind of reached high levels on both indicators down here. But again, these can remain very overbought for a while, but having not went very overbought on either leads me to believe that top probably isn't in for this cycle. And that's why I'm mostly considering that we are going to consolidate probably in the month at the very least, and maybe another month after that. But everything otherwise looks very good. And if you look at the quarterly chart, I haven't done incredible. Closing above the all-time high on the quarter chart, great. Riding the bands up, trend is up, it's not overbought. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic on the quarterly, and as long as we finish up here above the previous close, that chart will continue to remain well. Let's take a look at Ethereum. A lot of times charts rhyme, and a lot of times Ethereum right a little bit ahead of Bitcoin. See, it came down to its 100 exact support right now. It is in a downward consolidation flag. A lot of people would consider that a bull flag. We'll see how far down it gets, whether it's a flag or not. But that downward consolidation, that's kind of what I expect to see on Bitcoin, if not sideways consolidation. And it's just a lot of the same stuff. A lot of these charts are going to rhyme. Bitcoin, Ethereum, fairly concerning versus Bitcoin, as it has lost the 0.5 support, 0.05 support, and a lot of stuff seems to be trending down. It could not convincingly retake the 200 moving average on the daily. So who knows how low it goes? Maybe those Chinese ETFs for Ethereum will put that out. Litecoin took a big hit. It does seem to be that Litecoin is the indicator of short-term tops, as it hit its highs and really took off by itself and was swatted down swiftly. Uh, one thing I keep an eye on the week, like when will it finally become bullish and stay bullish? I'd love to see it close and maintain 2 weeks above 200 moving average. You'll notice it really struggles getting back above that 200 week average. It lost it back here. It was a little bit of support, and it just cannot trend above it. But what we do see is a bit of a rebasing on the trends here. You can see moving averages kind of leveling out as they had continued down for some time and potentially going to start ribboning up. So hopefully there's some hope in this chart uh, for those of you who might be interested. Now let's take a look at it versus Bitcoin, which is terrible. This is the weekly chart. There's really nothing to be excited about like versus Bitcoin, other than the fact that there's probably going to be periods where we have these short rallies versus Bitcoin. So if you're looking to get in there, that's something to keep an eye on. But timing the bottom on Litecoin versus Bitcoin is probably uh, one of the toughest things you can do based on this chart. Let's take a look at Link chart. Oh boy, that's not good that it closed back below the 200. It did it back here as well, but hopefully we can get some support here and also see some ribboning upward on this chart. This one looks a little bit better than Litecoin, but the next few weeks kind of indicates to me that it's consolidate between 17 and $12 before it makes a huge move. And I would assume since it based out here and consolidated for its up that bounce above 9.5. That would be my opinion. Everything's pointing down, but once you start getting this low on the chart on a weekly, you have some pretty good bounces back up. All right, last one is Doge that I'll kind of look at regularly. I would not be surprised if it does not come back down to its mid band. It's already tested that somewhat. Although with Doge, it does appear that it has some good ribboning, but it's probably under its 200 week moving average. Now I got to find this on. It has a lot more history. Oh no, it's above. So it's similar to Link, where it has the potential for some ribboning in the future, but it's going to have to consolidate and bounce, get all of the moving averages above the 200 here. Again, the white is or 20 period moving average, excuse me, and the red is the 200, the green is 50, and yellow is 100. That's on the fancy triple moving averages that I created. Got tons of settings on those. Apparently, my chair, but my standing desk is mad at me. But that's pretty much all the TA I want to get. Other things we could look at. We've already kind of looked at the dollar. Having it be strong doesn't necessarily bode well. Bitcoin. We also kind of looked at gold earlier in the video. Let's take a look at IBIT. We're trading this. There might be some data play on. It's also consolidating. It is also hinting at downward movement. And I would not be surprised if it has this kind of sideways consolidation. Bitcoin, and it doesn't come back down to around 35. Not enough data to go too far back on that, but wanting to play TA on an ETF, to me it looks down for 4 hours. Oh yeah, I definitely see that coming down to 30 or 35 on the 4 hour chart. That's what it looks like to me. You got everything trending down. You got bands opening up downward. Like everything I'm looking at to me points to Bitcoin going down, ETFs going down. It's like everything in the market kind of looks bad for the short. Not terrible, but just not good. Um, I want to take a look and make sure I didn't miss any news. We've already talked about Hong Kong ETFs. Those are for Bitcoin and Ethereum. I've talked about consolidation before, but the people who panic sold because Iran struck Israel, I don't think those are the type of going to hop back in as long as there are threats of Israel retaliating. That's just my opinion, speculation, but that's just kind of my theory on that. That doesn't mean somebody can't step in and buy what they've sold and start market buying again, but those people who were in the market may stay out for a while. Another reason. Uh, Political type stuff about Iran. Something I did find interesting in relation to those Chinese deaths that there are 969 billionaires in China, more than anywhere else in the planet. I had no idea they had that many. That is a ton, ton of billionaires, and now they're going to have access to spot backed Bitcoin ETF. This news with the halving coming up could make the TA kind of useless. Again, like when China banned Bitcoin, it had an immediate impact. So now China has approved ETF, and it could have an immediate impact if those flows start in. And I also talked earlier in this live about I don't know if they have a product similar to GBT that's going to create outflows that'll offset those inflows. So when that data does start to come out, we'll take a look at that. And this is just some TA that I've been kind of retweeting from that I think are decent. This is daily. They had a flag there. It looks like we're well below that now. This is where Iran struck. Definitely below that. They were targeting 50 MA. They looked at the MACD, pulled the MACD up. I do like to look at the MACD time to time. That's our chart. So the daily. So yeah, the daily has reset around zero. It's very possible it below zero, but I would be looking for the next crossover on the MACD to align with changes in trends on the moved RSI and the stochastic advance to look for a trend change up or at least a bounce. This was kind of important. Coinbase filed a brief seeking to appeal whether or not investment contract means you have to have an actual contract. So that's kind of something to keep an eye on. So legally, that would have huge ramifications. So all of these sort of altcoins from companies that are borderline securities that argue that they don't have a contract where investment that you're making, purchasing something that doesn't indicate an investment, that would clarified from this appeal. It would really only be an investment for an investment contract if you actually have an actual contract. Very, very important to keep an eye on in my opinion. All right, so we were taking a look at flows. GBTC, it had one day where it was like only 15 million in outflows, and people thought it was over. And then another 150, 160 million the next 2 days. And surely, I would assume, and today. Another one that I really respect, Income Sharks, also kind of pointing, sending consolidation Bitcoin eventually comes back up. And again, the monthly TA kind of supports an idea like this. So something I'm taking very, very seriously, possibility. And then when you see other respected traders with similar ideas, it kind of helps you realize that your idea might put most. All right, we're talking about that. I did say volatility coming. We were talking about the daily Bollinger Bands. I think I sent that then. Yeah, April 12th, as those bands started to contract, and then like right after I sent that, 2 hours later, it started selling off hard, and bands started. Just something to keep in mind when you see those bands pinch. That's all it's do, and it will be strong. There was some points last week where the TA started to look better, and honestly, right before the sell-off, it started to look really good. Started to look like we were going to test highs, and I was even about to say something about it. I was no, I better not. I'm not really that convinced. And it started to sell off, and I was thankful I didn't didn't send that one out. Some more TA that we're looking at here. Bitcoin monthly chart is a masterpiece. Now this is ruined because it picked all the way down to like 61 now, which is around the previous close. So also something. Oh yeah, so the GBTC flows got down to 17 and a half. Everyone was very happy about it. Started selling. Other important news: SEC filed a lawsuit against Uniswap, and SEC has not been faring very well in these lawsuits. It's been mostly like a scare tactic lately. I don't have much reason to believe anything's going to happen to Uniswap other than maybe a fine. They're really getting in trouble for their essentially their UI and how you interact because they gave you access to things that SEC deems as security. Now, the actual DeFi, the on-chain transactions, generally not really something they can control. Centralized. Want to get on Uniswap, get on Uniswap. Whereas their website, how you interact with the contract is their. They do own that. That is centralized. So that is why they are potentially. We have some more reporting of some institutions owning BlackRock shares, at least 13F filings. Macroscope, very good follow on X. They sharing some of this information. Expect more to be reported. They're not all due yet. Something to keep an eye on. We also look at CPI going up. Takes it all the way back to the last live. So that's pretty much all of the news. I don't really feel like going over any trading ideas today. I'm working on making a new video and a new indicator. I want to cover the volume candles that TradingView introduced. It's a very interesting notification. What's new? Time price opportunity chart. I'll probably be covering that as well. But I definitely wanted to look at volume candles for those. Essentially, it's just changing the width of the candle based on the volume. Say that's tons of volume, your candle's going to be wider and thus look more. To me, it's not very important, but some people find. I believe that's going to be it for the video today. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I am going to continue making videos, going to continue making lives when I get the opportunity to, at least once a week, hopefully. Potentially more. I'm wanting to get to 3 lives a week, but it's kind of hard to with my schedule. I appreciate you all stopping by. Please like and subscribe and watch the channel. Thank you. Have a good day.